Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Resident Alien. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So, first and foremost, obviously Harry's kind of dealing with the realization of like, hey, I'm a parent now, but he's trying to pretend like, no, it doesn't matter because of what it means for his species to be a parent. It's like, right, they go full Sparta with the way they kind of throw their children out in the wilderness. You survive, you survive. You don't, you don't. And it's just kind of like, right, Harry did all he did to survive, and he even makes the remark of, yeah, they want you to die in a ditch so you don't die in the road, so that you don't inconvenience them by making the road bumpy when we're going by on our vehicles. And it's like, selfish children. But obviously it weighs on him a lot more than he wants to claim that it does, because it's one thing that, you know, he was kind of taking care of the baby before finding out it was actually his baby, and now it makes it a little different because it's kind of, you know, parenthood just kind of snuck up on you. And I think that's going to be an interesting theme, obviously. I mean, it's been a part of the show for a while just because of the whole Asta and Jay thing, but even more so in this episode because while looking through some stuff at Dan's house, Asta found a letter that Dan sent to her mom years ago, back when Asta was in the 3rd grade, but there was no return it was like, oh, not here, return to sender. So, and Dan didn't want to get her hopes up because he's like, right, this place, this isn't where your mom was. But for her, it's like, she thinks if she met her mom, it'd fill a hole in her life. And it is kind of sad because obviously she's trying to do everything she can to be in Jay's life. And she's assuming like, right, if I'm like this, of course my mom's got to be like me. It had to be extenuating circumstances. Like, right, I was super young at the time. I was in a bad relationship. You know, I couldn't be a mother for Jay, but now I'm trying to make up for that, you know, sort of, you know. I mean, obviously they're not in the best place after missing Jay's birthday party. Once again, not her fault, but still, can't really explain that to Jay. Either way, she thinks that, like, there must be reasons for that, you know, when it comes to her mom as well, because she's like, what's my mom like? Obviously, she's got to be a lot like me, like, thinking that a lot of her personality's got to come from her mom. But, I'm jumping ahead a little bit. She actually does meet her mom, who's played by... I'm blanking on her character's name because it's been a while. She's the cop in La Brea, which is just interesting just because, like, if I'm not mistaken, that airs right after this. Yeah, I think right after this, because, like, it's also syndicating on Syfy right now. I guess just because season 2 is, like, right around the corner and stuff like that. But either way, I just thought that was interesting, and especially, without spoiling La Brea if you haven't seen it, it's interesting, too, because her character in La Brea has a very, like, complicated family circumstance. It's, like, not the same as this. It's actually kind of, it's literally quite the opposite of her circumstances with her character as Asta's mom. Because that's the sad thing that, because I was thinking when she opened the door at first, I was like, oh, we're going to find out she's actually, like Asta's older sibling or something, like, oh, like your mom went off and had another kid or something like that. It's like, no, that is her mom. Her mom was like her, fairly young when she had her. And she's like, yeah, like I just wouldn't have been a good parent. She's like, oh, I get it. You know, raising a kid's expensive. It's like, no, there are poor people who raise their kids all the time. It's just like, no, I'm not the type. Because Asta kept trying to make excuses because for her, it's like, no. You wouldn't just like give me up for like no good reason. And it's not even a situation of like, you know, and the quote unquote cliche, which is, you know, it's weird to say cliche because it's something I'm sure anyone in those circumstances would hope for, the cliche thing of like, yeah, I wanted you. I mean, it's hard to say because either the cliche thing is, oh, I wanted you, or the cliche thing is, I didn't want you. But it's like, oh, look how you turned out. You turned out fine. You turned out great. You know, I mean, that's a sad thing. Like, sometimes these can have happy endings and be like, oh, we're, you know, like Jay and Asta is an example of a happy ending. Once again, things are complicated, but they're on a better trajectory than Asta with her own mom. That is kind of heartbreaking that her mom's like, oh yeah, some people are here. Yeah, it's nothing important. The fact is she can't even spare 5 minutes. It's just kind of like, yeah, whatever. And it's like, oh, here's Jay. And even Harry being like, yeah, shouldn't you say like, oh my God, she looks just like you, or she's pretty, or something like that. Because even Harry knows, like, yeah, he's not even human, and he knows these are at least the pleasantries you should say. You know, that's what any grandparent would say about their grandchild, but for her, it's like, yeah, whatever. And then, like, she's coughing and stuff like that. So it's like, okay, you're probably sick from all the cigarettes and stuff. Which even Harry's like, as a doctor, please smoke more. It's like, you suck. And I love that the entire like drive back, like they're just talking about how, oh, she's shit, oh, she's caca, she's poo poo, like just all the names. It's like she's number 3 because she's a combination of she's all of them added together. And it is really sweet that Harry would do that for Asta. As he was saying in his head that, right, Asta's mom is pretty much like his species, where it's like, yeah, we leave our children out in the wilderness, but like Asta doesn't need to hear that right now. So he wanted to make her feel better, because even he realizes like no matter how much you want to pretend like, you know, that you don't care about something, it made him kind of realize like, I think it probably in his mind is like, that's not who I want to be. You know, it's like, yeah, my species does things a certain way, and maybe that's worked for us for so long, but that's not what he's feeling right now. You know, he's just trying to bury that feeling of, oh yeah, I don't need to be. I'm not worried about this whole parent thing. I'm more worried about the alien invasion, which we'll get to a little bit later. But I love that obviously this all circles around Darcy's doing that qualifier. And obviously, like, sadly, her and Elliot kind of came to, like, a disagreement, because he's trying to, like, tell her to slow down, but she keeps pushing herself, because obviously this has kind of been a long time coming, and obviously, like, for Darcy, there's a lot riding on this for her internally, because this is her last shot in her mind, and it's her chance to prove herself, not only to herself, but her parents, to get them off her back, and, you know, kind of make up for life that's kind of been on standstill for the past couple years. So I just love the whole Judy thing. It's like, oh yeah, tell Asta I said hi. Hi, Judy. Wow, that was fast. It's like, oh, I love you so much. And even later on, it's like Judy's kind of hitting on Harry a little bit, and he's like, I'm going to stare into this fire till my eyes dry out. And she's like, me too. And she just kind of keeps peeking back at him, and it's like, Judy would actually probably end up doing that. I wonder, has she just kind of gotten over Mike, or is it because she knows about the whole Mike and Torres situation or not, or just... I guess Judy just likes who she likes, so it's just kind of like, hey... Something that was also crossing my mind this episode, just because of the whole Darcy situation, which I do like that there is more and more between, I mean, to be fair, where things kind of started from them and where they are now is kind of interesting with, like, the whole Darcy and, Harry situation, but the fact that, like, she wants him to give her the cortisone, and it's like, oh, I guess, because he was like, I'm not a fan of you, so I didn't want to come here in the first place, but it's like, oh, I guess you don't want the churros. He's like, I am a fan of churros, that's the only reason why he's here. So it's like, I guess no churros for you or anything if you don't help me out. And I love Harry actually being like, honestly, I would have loved to, like, have you on the battlefield. You seem like you're a biter. She's like, I'm more of a hair puller. And then she puts up her hands, and he's almost like, huh. Oh, hopefully this will make you not... Like, there was, in that moment, just him laughing and stuff, it was almost like, huh, you're actually kind of bonding in this moment, you know? Because he doesn't want to give her the cortisone because of the damage it could do in the long run. We'll see. Plus, she hopefully doesn't turn into that, because the moment she ran out of pills, I was like, oh, please don't tell me that's going to turn into that. And even Harry's like, oh, these can be quite addictive. So... But that's also the thing, like, it feels like that could spiral into that. I hope it doesn't, but... Because even if you say, like, oh, it's just her mitigating the pain right now, it's like, well, that's how those addictions start. It's like, oh, yeah, like, I just need one because, like, you know, oh, my pain. It's like, I mean, just, and it just, you keep going down, and that kind of spirals more and more. But another thing I was thinking about, and I was kind of worried, is I was like, are we going to find out that because at the time it was believed that the Alpha Draconians are the ones that were here on Earth, right? So I was wondering if we were going to find out that Elliot is one. That's what I was kind of worried about. I did like at least that. I was like, oh, because they introduced that element of, oh, you could tell an Alpha Draconian because all you have to do is, like, put your finger up their nose, and it's kind of like a pleasure zone for them. So I was like, oh, I thought, like, someone would do that Elliot, and he'd be like, oh, and, like, it's like, oh my god, he's an Alpha Centaurian. That's Alpha Centaurian. Sorry. A little bit of Lost in Space kind of slipping in there. Alpha Draconian. So, kind of lizard people. And I love Harry it's like, yeah, like humans don't realize, he's like, crop circles are basically alien emojis. And it was like, basically Earth is mine, you, alpha draconian douchebags or something like that. He's like, yeah, basically it was an intricate middle finger to them. And he let Austin know about him kind of leaving that message for them. He's like, but Harry was certain that they would see it. So, which let's really quickly jump on that. Because I saw his name in the opening credits, but it wasn't until the alien started talking and I was like, oh, George Takei, right? Or is it Takei? I've always said Takei, but I think it might be Takei. Either way, I was like, I even love it. Oh my. And I'm like, he's like, wait, are you saying it's my? He's like, no, there's an O there. Oh my. It's like, oh, wow, or holy shit. You know? I love that. I mean, obviously it's like layers to it because it's like, right, it makes sense. George Takei, Star Trek, so like 100% makes sense to being kind of tied to it like this, which is also interesting too because like in the back of my mind I'm also thinking like, well, another show on Syfy was Haven, and wanted to it eventually popped up in the show with William Shatner, so I'm like, oh, that's kind of interesting in the long run. Like, once again, I'm digging too deep into that, but just think it's kind of interesting. But it does make you wonder because Harry did say like it was interesting, like why were the Greys? He figured it couldn't be the Greys because they typically don't care about humans. So he's like, why are you doing this? And they said specifically, like, we know who you are, and we're going to kill you and everyone you care about, which we know they do that in the long run. Granted, they never kill him, so I don't know if it's a thing of, actually, we killed everyone you care about, so we're going to leave you here all alone. It makes you wonder, will they plan on coming after Harry's people after this? Is that what that's supposed to be like a correlation to? It's not just the humans that they're going to take over Earth. Like, maybe they're just in maybe they're in their Viltrumite status. Like, right now, they're like, oh, we just want to conquer everything. We didn't get a real answer from that gray alien, like, why you're doing this. So, which is interesting, like, just, and I was about to say, like, referencing Invincible, and then I was thinking about Alan, who's voiced by Seth Rogen, who was Paul from the movie Paul. Wasn't Paul a gray alien? I haven't seen that movie in so long. Either way, because then also my brain kind of does loops, because I'm like, oh yeah, Simon Pegg was in that, who was also in the reboots of the Star Trek movies. Either way. Because I thought that was so interesting, the moment, like, him, Darcy, and Asta were on their way back after the competition, and then the car stops, and it's like, okay, and it's like the power went out, and you're like, oh, this is bad, and then, like, time froze, and you're like, wait, what? So, like, we know their portals can act, like, you know, punch a hole through time, space and time, because even Harry was trying to explain it to Asta, but even he was like, yeah, actually, I don't know how it works, because even my species hasn't been able to, like, figure out, like, the whole portal time travel mechanic and all that. So it's like, I guess they just had I guess just showing how much more advanced their technology is than Harry's people. But the fact is that they froze them like that. You're like, interesting. And he kind of didn't want to tell Asta what was what, because it's like, right. Because at the very least, I guess like the Alpha Draconians, he was probably like less worried about, but he was saying like the Greys are a lot more, I'm trying to remember, did he say like the Alpha Draconians were more vicious? But I think he said like the Greys are the more vicious, more dangerous ones. So, and now the fact is that they're like, oh, specifically targeting him. It's not like just like, oh, it's not just Earth. Specifically, we're coming after you and the people you care about. So that's when you kind of get into the complicated rub of it all. So I'm curious to see what that's all about. Understanding, is it purely, are they purely just motivated by like what Harry was here to do before? Now they're the ones doing it, which I think is the irony of that. It takes another alien species and is going to take an alien to save this world from another alien species, even though Harry initially came here for the same purposes, like killing the humans and stuff. That guy that's working with the government, that the general and David are completely unaware of, that guy, I'm curious, are we going to find out he's actually Alpha Centaurian or something like that, or not, unless we end up finding out he's actually one of Harry's species? Probably not. He probably is a Grey as well. Because that Grey was like, oh, please don't mention the Alpha Centaurian. I keep doing that. Alpha, is Alpha Centauri, like, it's Alpha Centauri on Lost in Space, so where am I getting Alpha Centaurian? Actually, I don't think it's Alpha Centauri in Lost in Space, I think it's Alpha Centauri. Maybe it is Centauri. Either way, got my mind is wandering. But my thing is, they don't want the Alpha Draconian. It's like, oh, don't bring those douchebags here. So could they be here and not the Greys will be completely unaware? But it's like, it feels like that has to be a Grey, like, because the whole point is like, oh, you start with like the whole dismantling like a planet. You start like on a governmental level and then just kind of break down the infrastructure from there or something, right? So that's how you infiltrate from the inside. So you would assume that's all connected, but I feel like there's still room for that possibly be something else. Well, I like that line of, what was it that Harriet's like, right, you want a parent's job, like that whole element of being there for someone, like parenting, that role can be filled not only just for parenting a child and being there for them, keeping them warm, not throwing them to the wolves, but it could also be there to kind of help a friend and lend a hand to a friend, or making people feel safer than they really are, in this case by Harry not telling her like the real danger that they're in. Shifting gears a little bit, I feel so bad about that whole Darcy and Elliot thing, because like, granted, they made up and he's like, of course I'm gonna be here, and it's like everyone from town is there to cheer her on too, and she's introducing Elliot to everybody. But when she's talking to Asa, and Asa's a little down, and she's like, oh my god, you don't like him, right? Just tell me so I can go ahead and dump him and everything could go back to normal. She's like, no, I love Elliot. The fact is that that's her immediate reaction, but it might just be like, oh man, god, if my bestie doesn't like him, then I guess I don't have to work. But it's like, I think there's still that part of Darcy that is still, there's still that immediate like gut reaction to, I gotta run, you know, like, oh, this isn't gonna work out, I'm gonna mess this up somehow, so might as well sabotage it from the very beginning. It's kind of that, plus obviously she's stressing about the whole competition, because now she's going to like the main event thing in like 3 weeks, so we'll see how things kind of go from there. And you're just worried about Darcy, because you know she's pushing herself so hard just to qualify her alone. In the next 3 weeks she's gonna push herself even harder, and probably is going to try and get Harry to kind of cut some corners, and that's probably going to get very nasty, especially because that's when her parents are actually potentially going to show up. It's like, right, they didn't show up for the quarterfinals because that's just the warm-ups. It's like the people you care about and patients were there for you, but your parents were, even if it was just a warm-up or the quarter qualifiers, they were still there for you when your parents weren't. I didn't even tie that together, because Darcy got mad at Elliot. She's like, oh, stop parenting me, and it's like, oh, that kind of comes full circle as the theme of the episode. Because you had the whole thing with Liv and Mike, where Liv is giving Mike the snow globe, and it's like, oh, like, just so I can have something to miss when you know, in case I like go back. But he was like, no, you're just trying to get me to stay. He's like, because, you know, it's like, oh, maybe it's because trying to say, like, trying to keep up the whole him and Detective Torres situation. And he's like, yeah, like, I thought you'd be happy I'd be able to leave. And she's almost like, why would I be happy you leave? She's like, that way you can become sheriff. And she's like, wait, you think I can be sheriff one day? And he's like, yeah, but you kind of have to put your hobbies aside and stuff like that. Yeah. He's like, yeah, because I could have been a Ren Fair guy. And, but what would I look like stopping people on a horse? And, you know, I can't really write tickets with a giant turkey leg in one hand. But also, it is sweet to know, like, Liv and his dad talk behind his back. It's like, yo, what are you two over here gossiping about? It's like, oh, look at this. It's like, yeah. Apparently, his dad knows about the Torres situation. And it's like, wait, moving back to DC? He's like, I don't want to move back. He's like, what? All you ever do is complain and talk about all the things you love about DC. He's like, I'm able to complain because I like to complain. You know, but he's like, I've never seen you happiest, and you are right. You are happy here. You just can't kind of get out of your own way. So him and Darcy are kind of in that similar vein of, you're just trying to sabotage things because you are happy, and you're scared to kind of take that step forward. And he has his moment, and once again, that dynamic, it was always like this back and forth that they had. But I did like that, you know, Mike really made an effort near the end of season 1 to like kind of make things better between him and Liv. And it feels like it's been up and down, but it's still like kind of, I think it's more so steady. They have their ebb and flow in their way of things. But that moment, I continue to love, like, when they share like very like beautiful moments. And at the end, he talked about when his dad, he's like, my dad had like a light in him, a spark in him when my mom was alive. That like, hey, like when the moment you hear her keys put in the door, it's like, oh, the party's about to start. But for him, it's like the moment she died, that light left. And Liv said, but that at the very least, to have that as long as he did was amazing, you know? It's kind of, once again, it's better to have loved and lost than never have loved at all, because he had that light in his life, and that will always be a shining moment in your life, you know? And it should never be something where you look at with regret of like, oh, you know, yes, you know, his mom is gone and what that means for his dad, but he had that light in his life, that spark in him when he did because of all of it. So that's never a bad thing, you know? Because she was talking about, like, yes, I come back here. She even introduced Mike to the spot where she saw the ship years ago when she told the camp person, and they didn't believe, that guy didn't believe her. And she says that she comes back here every so often. It's like, yeah, they might not come back, but there's still that possibility that maybe one day they will. And she's like, I know I'm probably like all alone in this, but he's like, no, you're wrong. He's like, you're not alone at all. And I was like, oh God, I love their dynamics so much. That's a partnership and friendship I really, really love. Another avenue to this episode is the whole situation with Ben and Kate. So Kate's now like, yeah, so I supported that whole resort thing. Yeah, let's not do that. And he's like, okay, but I'm still going to do it. She's like, no. Oh, because I told you to, like, no matter what, stand up to, steadfast in your position. And he's like, yeah. And she's like, okay, I get that, but it's me. It's different. He's like, how? It's like, well, the difference is she's your wife. So it's kind of like, but it's still the thing of like, oh, you should be, marriage is about compromise. It's like, right, you don't have to agree on everything, but Kate, because even he's like, oh wow, like you having this perspective on like, oh, keep patience the way it is because it's a beautiful town and you don't want it to lose what makes it what makes patience. Which he's like, oh, I never thought I'd hear you say that, but I still do believe the resort's good for the town. So, and now Kate's going to head in the direction of, she is a lawyer, so she will know how to like put like kind of, what was it? It's going to be something that could basically halt the resort from being built, which you're like, okay. So things are already awkward between Ben and Kate, especially because they're finally like back in their own ebb and flow after everything. But now it's also like, cool, this is about to get even more tumultuous. And I mean, it was just like that disagreement in the beginning. You're just kind of like, oh, this is awkward. But that's also because I'm the non-confrontational person, so I would submit. And that so kind of makes me a lot like Ben in that regard. But it's like, oh no, you should steadfast in what you believe, because he does legitimately think, oh, this is what's best for the town. But also you have to think about, yeah, but how much of it is just purely, it is about the town, but there's also other elements of, it's kind of about your legacy and you wanting the town to have a little bit more. But it's like, I think I want to lean into more, rather than being cynical, I do want to lean in more and believe like, no, you're doing it for the best of the town. So we'll see how that plays out, but I think there's going to be a butting of heads in that fair. I mean, I think that's also kind of, maybe the fact is that, like, right, they're reading books together at the end. It's like, right, despite our disagreements, we're still married, we still love each other, and it's, yeah, but it's also like, maybe it's also supposed to be symbolic of, yeah, we're having this beautiful moment, but it's like, secretly, we're both like, I'm pushing ahead with what I've got planned, you're pushing ahead with what you've got planned. I don't know that I'm about to be like blindsided by you kind of halting this resort situation for now, so we'll ultimately have to wait and see where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. Really quickly before I end this, I love that whole opening. I'm like, what the hell does this have to do with anything? And then it's like, because things froze, and then like, oh, like things moved along. Like at the beginning when that husband caught that guy cheating with his wife or whatever. And now it's like, oh, it was them setting up the fact is like, oh, aliens the Greys have the power to probably freeze time within a certain like range. It wasn't just allocated to that vehicle. It was in that general area they froze time. It makes you wonder how large of an area of effect that has. So it's just kind of an interesting thing I should throw in there, because it does seem like such a throwaway thing because it's like, it's so unrelated to the episode, but it was also secretly related. So I just thought that was interesting. To the point, like, by the time we got to the end of the episode, I was like, oh yeah, I completely forgot that was like the cold opening to the episode or something like that. So either way, like I said, it's going to be interesting to see what happens next. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.